the world in 2025 feels different. Beyond the noise of politics, war, technology, and consumerism, something quieter yet far more powerful is happening beneath the surface, a spiritual awakening. And what's even more surprising to many is that this awakening isn't confined to religious communities. It's not just Muslims rediscovering faith, it's people from all walks of life, all belief systems, all corners of the world, turning unexpectedly to the Qur'an. Why would non-Muslims, atheists, agnostics, Christians, spiritual seekers be drawn to a book they once saw as foreign, distant, or misunderstood? The answer lies not in trends or social pressure, but in something deeply human: the search for truth. For many, the Qur'an was once just a religious text associated with a culture or identity they didn't share. But as more and more people pick it up and read it with open eyes, they're finding something they didn't expect. They're finding themselves. This world, advanced as it is, has left many spiritually bankrupt. People are surrounded by information but starving for meaning. They scroll endlessly through curated feeds but feel more alone than ever. They chase careers, fame, success, only to realize that none of it fills the void inside. When that quiet crisis sets in, some begin to question everything. And in that vulnerable moment, when the heart is finally ready to listen, the words of the Qur'an hit differently. They don't just inform, they transform. The Qur'an does something most books cannot do. It doesn't speak at you, it speaks to you. Directly, personally. It calls out the questions you've been too afraid to ask. It answers doubts before you've even fully formed them. It tells stories not just for entertainment, but to awaken reflection, to guide the soul back to purpose, to remind the human being who they are and why they exist. And for many non-Muslims, this experience is nothing short of life-altering. In 2025, we are seeing a shift. People are no longer satisfied with shallow spirituality or inherited labels. They are looking for depth, for connection, for something that makes sense in both the heart and the mind. And they're finding that the Qur'an doesn't demand blind belief, it invites contemplation. It doesn't guilt people into obedience. It awakens the conscience. It doesn't separate science from faith, it harmonizes them. It doesn't offer escape from the world, it gives purpose within it. Social media has played a role in this awakening, too. Former atheists sharing their journeys to Islam. Young professionals who once mocked religion explaining how one verse of the Qur'an changed their life. Women who once saw Islam as oppressive, now calling it liberating. These real, raw, honest stories are cutting through the noise and making people pause. They're no longer seeing Islam through headlines. They're seeing it through hearts. And the more people read, the more they realize that the Qur'an wasn't sent only for a specific tribe or time. It was sent for all of humanity, in every era, for every soul seeking truth. This isn't just a religious book, it's a living guidance. It doesn't just speak to Muslims, it speaks to mankind. This spiritual awakening may not make headlines, but it's happening everywhere, in living rooms, coffee shops, college dorms, and quiet corners of the night. People are dusting off the assumptions they were handed and reaching for something real. And when they open the Qur'an, they're not finding a book of rules. They're finding a voice that says, I see you. I know you. Come back to what you were created for. Something is happening in 2025, and it's not political, economic, or technological. It's spiritual, and the Qur'an is at the heart of it. In a world flooded with distractions and material temptations, more people are pausing to ask the deeper questions that once felt too distant or unnecessary. Who am I really? Why am I here? What happens after this life? In 2025, those questions are being asked more than ever before, not just by people raised in religious homes, but by those who were never religious to begin with. As this hunger for spiritual meaning grows, a surprising pattern is emerging. Countless non-Muslims are finding themselves drawn to the Qur'an. At first glance, many approach it out of curiosity, intellectual interest, or even skepticism. But what they find inside is something that speaks far beyond the pages. It speaks to the soul. The Qur'an does not read like an ordinary book. It doesn't unfold in chronological order, nor does it fit into the genre boxes that modern readers are used to. Instead, it meets each person where they are, in a way that feels deeply personal. For many non-Muslims who read it for the first time, there's a moment of awe. It's not just the poetic rhythm of the Arabic or the profound nature of the content. It's the feeling that the book knows them, that it was written for them at this very moment of their life. What's even more remarkable is that these awakenings often happen in silence. No preacher, no pressure, no public event, just a quiet moment between the reader and the Qur'an. A verse resonates, a story unlocks a memory, a command makes perfect sense. And suddenly, things begin to shift. The reader starts questioning the foundation of their old beliefs, not out of guilt or fear, but out of clarity and inner peace. This is why the Qur'an continues to impact even those outside of Islam. It doesn't impose, it invites, it doesn't push, it pulls. It doesn't argue, it unveils. And for those who were lost in the noise of the modern world, this sense of divine dialogue is nothing short of revolutionary. It feels like being seen, heard, and known, not by people, but by the Creator himself. In 2025, as many search for meaning beyond politics, culture, and personal identity, the Qur'an stands as a timeless answer in an ever-changing world. It's no longer a book just for Muslims. It's becoming a refuge for anyone who dares to ask life's biggest questions. The modern world has become louder than ever. Social media feeds overflow with opinions, breaking news, and endless comparisons. People are constantly told what to believe, how to live, what to chase, and in the middle of this noise, countless souls are starting to feel lost. Even with advanced technology, education, and freedom of choice, many are suffering from anxiety, depression, and a deep sense of emptiness. In 2025, this emotional and spiritual burnout has reached a tipping point. As a result, more and more people, including non-Muslims, are turning to something they never considered before: the Qur'an. What they're discovering is something profoundly different from the chaos of the modern world. The Qur'an offers stillness. It offers purpose. It offers truth that doesn't change with trends or time. While the world screams for attention, the Qur'an calmly calls people back to themselves, back to their fitrah, their original nature. It doesn't offer temporary escape, it offers lasting clarity. Many who approach the Qur'an expecting rigid rules or outdated stories are surprised by its emotional depth. They find comfort in verses that speak of God's closeness, mercy, and awareness of human struggles. They read about patience in hardship, purpose in suffering, and the promise of peace for those who sincerely seek it. And they start to feel something that had been missing for a long time: hope. It is this hope that is changing lives, not dramatic miracles, not overnight conversions, just hope, real, deep, spiritual hope that slowly fills the void. For the first time, many people feel seen, even though they've never prayed. They feel guided, even though they've never belonged to a religion. The Qur'an doesn't wait for perfection. It speaks to people in their brokenness, and that is something this world desperately needs. In this age of confusion, where people have been taught to define themselves by what they own, how they look, or how others view them, the Qur'an offers a radically different message. You are more than all of that. You are a soul. You were created with intention, and your Creator is calling you back, not to burden you, but to free you. In 2025, this message is echoing in more hearts than ever before. And even those who once saw the Qur'an as distant are now finding it impossible to ignore. One of the most surprising elements of the spiritual awakening happening in 2025 is that it's not fueled by institutions or religious pressure. It's powered by individuals. People from all walks of life are picking up the Qur'an, often alone, with no teacher, no mosque, and no plan. They're reading it on their phones, listening to recitations on YouTube, or scrolling through translated verses on social media. And somehow, in these quiet, personal moments, something profound begins to stir in their hearts. It's not emotional hype, it's not cultural influence, it's something far deeper. The unmistakable realization that this book holds a truth that their soul has been yearning for. The Qur'an has a unique power to remove layers of doubt, confusion, and inherited assumptions. For many non-Muslims, it feels like the first time religion is making sense, not because it entertains, but because it clarifies. They find in it a vision of God that is pure, majestic, And they read about a creator who is close, not distant. One who listens, who forgives, who guides. The language is strong, direct, yet deeply compassionate. It doesn't hide from life's struggles. It addresses them head on. It talks about pain, betrayal, injustice, loss, and then gives meaning to each of them. This is what so many people were missing in their spiritual search. They had tasted pieces of truth in various philosophies and religions, but nothing gave them the full picture. The Qur'an, in contrast, offers a worldview that's both vast and intimate. It doesn't just explain who God is. It tells you who you are, why you were created, and what awaits you beyond this life. It reconnects the soul to its source. In a time when people are exhausted from being lied to, by media, politics, and even by their own desires, the Qur'an feels like a rare and honest voice. It doesn't promise comfort without effort or paradise without struggle, but it promises truth. And for a growing number of people, especially non-Muslims, truth is what they've been chasing all along. What they find in the Qur'an isn't just a belief system. It's a return to what they always suspected deep down, that life has a purpose. And that purpose begins with knowing the one who created it. In today's world, authenticity is rare. People crave it, not just in relationships and conversations, but in their pursuit of spiritual truth. That's why in 2025, many non-Muslims are turning toward the Qur'an, not because someone forced them, but because they sensed something real. Unlike many other texts that have been edited, debated, or revised through history, the Qur'an stands firm as a book that claims divine preservation. And that claim has become a starting point for many seekers. The more they study its history, the more they're drawn in, not just emotionally, but intellectually. For those who come from academic, secular, or skeptical backgrounds, the Qur'an presents an irresistible challenge. Could this really be the Word of God, untouched for over 1,400 years? And when they begin to explore its linguistic beauty, scientific references, and internal consistency, they find themselves not dismissing it, but admiring it. The style of the Qur'an is unlike anything they've read before. It's powerful, rhythmic, and layered with meanings. Verses connect across chapters in a way that feels beyond human design. It doesn't follow the structure of ordinary books, yet somehow every verse hits a deeper note. This intellectual attraction often leads to spiritual curiosity. Many start researching how the Qur'an was revealed, how it was memorized, and how its message has remained consistent across centuries and cultures. They realize that the Qur'an didn't come to entertain, it came to guide, and its guidance is not limited to one ethnicity or language. It speaks to the human being as a human being, cutting through nationality, race, and status. In 2025, people are also asking big questions about identity, morality, and truth. The world around them is full of shifting values and blurred lines. The Qur'an, by contrast, offers clarity without arrogance. It doesn't adjust its message to fit the times. It calls the reader to adjust themselves to eternal truth. That firmness, in a world of flexibility, feels refreshing, even liberating. So, when non-Muslims say they feel seen by the Qur'an, they're not just talking about emotional comfort. They're talking about intellectual alignment. They're talking about discovering a divine message that doesn't shy away from truth, challenge, or depth. And for many, that's the beginning of a transformation they never expected. One of the most powerful reasons non-Muslims are turning to the Qur'an in 2025 is because of how deeply personal it feels. Despite being revealed over 14 centuries ago, the Qur'an speaks to problems and emotions that are alive right now. It doesn't sound like a distant book from a faraway land. It sounds like a letter written directly to the reader. And for someone going through anxiety, heartbreak, confusion, or a search for meaning, this experience is nothing short of life-changing. Many people today feel disconnected, not just from religion, but from themselves. They go through the motions of life while carrying questions no one around them can answer. Why am I really here? Why does suffering exist? What happens after death? These aren't small thoughts. These are the questions that keep people awake at night. And in a time when modern life gives shallow answers, the Qur'an gives timeless ones. It validates those struggles instead of hiding them. It says clearly you will be tested, but your tests have a purpose. The Qur'an doesn't speak down to the reader. It invites, it reasons, it tells stories of past nations not for entertainment, but so we reflect. It reminds us again and again that this life is temporary, and that the pain we feel is not without meaning. For many who were raised outside of Islam, this is an entirely new way of viewing the world. They're used to either blind optimism or complete despair. But the Qur'an teaches something in between: hope through hardship, clarity through confusion. What's especially unique is how the Qur'an speaks directly to the heart. There are verses that feel like they were meant just for you. Verses that appear when you most need them. This kind of spiritual connection isn't something you can force. It happens naturally. And that's what makes the experience so moving. Non-Muslims who never imagined they'd relate to an Islamic scripture are now finding themselves in tears reading verses about God's mercy, forgiveness, and guidance. This isn't just about converting to Islam. It's about a soul waking up after years of being asleep. It's about discovering that the Creator knows you better than you know yourself. And when people taste that kind of connection, even for a moment, they start walking a path they never planned to walk. That's how the Quran is transforming lives in 2025, one soul, one verse, one quiet night at a time. Another powerful reason non-Muslims are turning to the Quran in 2025 is because they are witnessing something they never expected: peace. Not just the external kind, but the kind that settles deep in the heart. In a world full of noise, stress, and overwhelming uncertainty, people are searching for silence, purpose, and direction. They've tried everything: self-help books, therapy, spirituality retreats, even detachment from religion altogether. But still, something feels missing. That's when some stumble upon the Quran, almost by accident. And what they find isn't just a set of rules. It's a pathway to inner stillness. What makes this experience so profound is that many of these people had negative assumptions about Islam. They were told it was strict, harsh, or outdated. But when they begin to read the Quran for themselves, those stereotypes fall apart. They discover verses of compassion, of justice, of deep wisdom. They find a balance that's hard to find elsewhere, a God who is both merciful and mighty, both near and above, both forgiving and just. And this balanced image of the divine brings a kind of clarity they didn't know they needed. People are also overwhelmed by the Qur'an's focus on intention. In a world where actions are judged by performance, the Qur'an reminds them that it is the sincerity of the heart that matters most. Even a small act done for the right reasons carries immense weight. This shifts their entire view of spirituality. It becomes less about public identity and more about a personal, private relationship with the Creator. That kind of message resonates powerfully in a time where people feel judged and misunderstood. The Quran also doesn't promise an easy life, but it does promise meaning. And this is what makes it feel so authentic to readers. It doesn't hide the reality of pain, loss, or confusion. It acknowledges them, then points the way forward. It teaches that with every hardship comes ease, not later, but with it. This gives people strength. It tells them they're not broken, they're being shaped. So, in a time when religion is often viewed with skepticism and spirituality is treated like a trend, the Quran stands apart. It's not chasing popularity, it's offering truth. And even those who never expected to believe in anything again are finding themselves drawn in, not by pressure, but by peace. A peace that whispers to the soul, this is where you were meant to be. As we look at the world in 2025, a quiet revolution is unfolding. It's not political, it's not material, it's spiritual. More and more people, from every walk of life, are searching beyond the surface. They're no longer satisfied with vague inspiration or empty rituals. They want truth, they want meaning, and many of them are finding it in a place they never expected: the Quran. For non-Muslims, this journey isn't about trends or identity shifts. It's about something much deeper. It's about healing old wounds, finding answers to long-standing questions, and reconnecting with the Creator in a way that feels raw, honest, and pure. The Quran isn't simply a religious book for Muslims anymore. It's becoming a guide for anyone who dares to ask, reflect, and seek with an open heart. And that's the beauty of divine truth. It doesn't need to be marketed. It speaks for itself. The Qur'an speaks in the language of the soul, and that language has no boundaries of race, language, or belief system. It simply calls. And in 2025, more and more people are finally answering. To everyone watching or reading this, whether you're a Muslim, a seeker, or just curious, thank you for being part of this journey. May your path be filled with light, reflection, and peace. And may you always find what your heart is truly seeking. Thank you for being here.